Okay, hello everyone and welcome to my third episode of Meet the Practitioner. So today I'm with Jen and I might let Jen introduce herself. So Jen, do you want to tell us what you do, maybe how long you've been doing it, where you're based, and do you do Skype?
I do, yes. So I'm Genevieve Mlotkowski and I started studying naturopathy at 18 and I'm now 41. So I've been doing it for quite a long time. And I am based in Quakers Hill and North Rock. So I have two clinics and I also do online. So I do a lot of phone and Zoom and Skype consults with people I do overseas as well as people in Australia. A lot of people in rural areas or people who want my specific programs because I have some specific programs for certain conditions. So I help kids recover from autism. It's about an 18-month program. I have a miscarriage prevention program and I do a lot of work with infertility and cancer. So, yeah.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. And to have people from around the world, that's really cool. How do they find you?
Through friends or relatives or through products in the ranges that I prescribe. So some of the companies might give them my details. So, yeah, lots of like relatives and friends. They just tell them about me and I'll do a Skype or Zoom with them overseas and we can send stuff. We've never had any trouble sending products overseas. We've always been able to send them to whichever country the person's in. And sometimes it takes a bit longer to get there, but certainly now with COVID, postage will be a bit longer than how it was previous to COVID. So, yeah.
Yeah, right. And so you did it at 18. I reckon that's pretty cool because, so did you always know you want to do it and how did you even hear about it? Because I don't think at that age I even knew what naturopathy was.
My mum was always sick. So she had a lot of different types of cancer over the course of her life. And, she did bits and pieces like juice fasting, meditation, saw different alternative practitioners. She got better. She had like terminal breast cancer and she actually got better from that when I was quite young. I was about 6 or 7 when she first got diagnosed with that one. And, she'd had thyroid tumours and brain tumours and melanomas, and then she did eventually pass. She had endometrial cancer that spread to around her heart. So, she passed from that at 60. But we were always raised with wholemeal bread and butter and real food. And, if you were hungry and you wanted a snack, you'd grab some fruit or some veggies. There wasn't packets and processed stuff, chips and lollies and chocolates, and they were kind of party food for us. So we did get to have that food now and then, but it wasn't like, something that was kept in our house that we would have on a regular basis. So, and, we didn't have dessert that often. And the same kind of goes for my family, I guess, for my kids. Dessert's kind of more of a sometimes food and it's not something you have every night. And so, and they just, if they're hungry, it's like go grab a carrot and they're happy to do that. So, so it's just, I guess that's the way I was raised. So, it's always been there. And my careers advisor, he actually told me about naturopathy and said, I think this is what you should study. And he mentioned a girl a few years older than me that studied it. And she was in a lot of the dance groups that I was in. And I thought, this is actually what I want to study. So it was pretty easy to make that decision. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, it sounds like you've been on a wellness path quite naturally, really. So that's really good.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us what naturopathy is? Like, is it diet? Is it pills? Is it vitamins? What is it? Like, what do you do for people?
So people come to us with all kinds of things. So this morning I've seen a guy with cancer. He's got prostate cancer, which is very slow growing. So it's quite easy to work with someone with prostate cancer because they often don't want to go down the medical path because it's a slow growing cancer. Then I've also seen a young girl with chronic abdominal pain, and she wasn't being investigated. So we finally got to, a diagnosis and finding out what's going on with her, just pushing her to see some good GPs, friends of mine, and we were able to get an ultrasound, so we were able to get a diagnosis for her. So it's, different bits and pieces like that. And then the last guy just wanted to come for general health because his wife was seeing me. So we do a lot of preventative medicine. So definitely dietary changes. So, there's a lot you can do with diet, with cholesterol. And, we do a lot of work with gluten-free, dairy-free diets. I'm also a GAPS practitioner. So the GAPS diet is the gut and psychology syndrome diet, and it helps a great deal with autism recovery. So that's a great dietary program to help kids on the spectrum. Then we do herbal medicine, so liquid herbs, which are very effective. I was just chatting to a friend, he's a GP, on the weekend about his mother-in-law who has just been diagnosed with dementia. I'm just talking about the effectiveness of liquid herbs with dementia and how we notice phenomenal results with people with dementia, improving their brain chemistry, memory, concentration, coordination, that kind of thing, taking liquid herbs. And then we do supplements like nutritional supplements. We do a lot of genetic testing to find out if people have certain genes. Obviously with autism, it's very genetic. So we're looking at what genes they have, how do we treat those genes? What can we do to prevent autism? I have a lot of kids who, the parents might have one child, but they're quite nervous to have a second or a third. And we can certainly prevent autism. So it's something that we do a lot of work pre-pregnancy to prevent it. So that's something we do a great deal in clinic. And then, just homeopathy as well. So I do homeopathic detox for medicines. So if people have had certain medicines in pregnancy or post-pregnancy, like, when they were quite young, we do a detox program for those medicines as well. So anything that they were prescribed or anything that was given by a doctor, we can certainly detox those from the system with homeopathy. That really works quite effectively. And then I guess we look at blood tests and testing different nutritional levels through urine and treating those deficiencies. So something that is quite interesting is a lot of kids on the spectrum or with ADD or ADHD have massive nutritional deficiencies, and either high or low cholesterol, low iron, often celiac. They have problems with DHEA and cortisol, which are your stress hormones. And we can treat all of that naturally without them needing to be on any medication. So not always, but mostly they're able to avoid any medications. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's really amazing. And so you're having really good results with that, with the kids with autism in particular.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So I've had a lot of kids recover, a lot of kids who, by the time they're school age, they're able to go to a mainstream school without an aid. That's great. Obviously, it takes a lot of pressure off the parents. If they're able to go to mainstream school, they don't have to look or investigate to find a special school, and then they're able to just go into the classroom without having a teacher's aid. So then, they're able to just fit in with their peers. Obviously, they're not going to look different or seem different at all because they don't have a teacher's aid. So that's great for the kids' self-esteem. So a lot of those kids will be diagnosed with autism at 2 or 3, and then by the time they're ready for school, they'll get reassessed and they're no longer on the spectrum. So, yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. And so, say in that case, how often would they come to you? Or how often do people generally come to you?
So if we're looking at simple stuff, people might only come once or twice. But if it's like a chronic thing like stage 4 cancer or infertility or autism, they might be coming every 3 or 4 weeks for up to 18 months or, potentially longer if it's stage 4 cancer. They might be coming for 2 or 3 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I want to ask too, how do you diagnose? Because I've been to naturopaths and they've looked in my eyes. So is that how you diagnose? But I've also heard that you do blood tests and you actually look yourself in the microscope. Is that right?
Yeah, so I do a blood test where we just take a drop of their blood and have a look at it on a slide under the microscope. So it's not so much diagnosing as we can look for nutritional deficiencies, look for certain weaknesses, have a look for parasites, candida, certain bugs, liver stuff, oxidative damage, that kind of thing. So we're more just looking for weaknesses that we can treat. Legally, we can't really diagnose, so it's more like, well, your blood test is showing that you have this. I mean, if you go back to the GP, they can run through it with you and they'll tell you that you have Hashimoto's or Graves or whatever it is. But, we can pick that up in blood tests if we know what we're looking for. If someone comes in, we often know what we're looking for based on their symptoms. And we certainly do lots of investigations. The GPs I work with are fantastic in doing investigations. I can comfortably send the patients to them and ask for certain scans or tests, and they will happily write them based on, my analysis of the patient. And then we can kind of get to the root cause of it, because it's really important to get a diagnosis. It's really sad the amount of parents that are told, oh no, sorry, your child's in pain, they're just going to have to continue to be in pain, or your child's on the spectrum, they're going to have to continue to be on the spectrum. And that's not the case at all. Lots of these things we can work on and we can get on top of without medication, and the children can eventually recover and get better. And certainly a child that's in chronic pain, that's not something that you just want to be able to tell a parent that, oh, your child's just going to have to keep suffering because we don't know what's going on. It's something that needs to be investigated and to find out why the child's in pain. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's fascinating. And it's good that I didn't realise that you actually work with doctors, that you kind of work together to get tests and so on. So that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're not doctors, we're naturopaths, and I can't refer for an ultrasound or a CT or an MRI or whatever I feel the patient needs to get an actual diagnostic picture. And if we feel that there's something there, like this little girl this morning who had problems with her lymph nodes in her gastrointestinal tract, actually by having an ultrasound or an x-ray or whatever it is, to get a picture of what's happening with that particular person. So.
Yeah, cool. Okay, now how do you motivate people to stick to their diet? Because I know that it's like when I went, it's like so much change, and like you kind of have a huff and a puff and a sign like, okay, I will cut out sugar, I will cut out gluten, and but yeah, so how do you motivate people to stick to it, and do they stick to it?
I think the people that are really unwell, because I do a lot of stage 4 cancer, that's probably the main thing I see in clinic, they will change everything and anything. I mean, if you've been told you've got stage 4 cancer, I do a lot of work with patients with bone mets, and sometimes the mets go. Sometimes we can get a clear scan where they don't have bone mets anymore. So, if they're that sick, they're going to change their diet. On the other extreme is, I guess, people who are a little bit unwell may not be that good at changing it. But I always say 80-20. So if you've been given a diet, if you can stick with it 80% of the time, you'll certainly notice phenomenal changes and benefits, as opposed to someone who only, can stick with it 20%. But, if you break it 20% of the time, that's probably okay. You are human and I'm human as well. And sometimes, we do like our coffee, and sometimes we like a bit of chocolate or a bit of wine or whatever. But, as long as you're sticking with it 80% of the time, that's probably the key. I guess it just depends on the severity of your illness. I've seen people with chronic autoimmune diseases, and they will be quite good in sticking with their diet, because if they've been in pain, I'm thinking one woman off the top of my head, she wasn't able to play with her kids for about 10 years. And so that motivating factor of being pain-free, of sticking with her diet, losing the weight and improving her rheumatoid arthritis so she could actually play with her kids, that was a huge motivating factor for her. And she stuck with it. And one of her kids actually said, oh, Mum, can you come and do this with me? And like in the past, she'd always said no. But on this one day, she actually thought, wow, I actually have energy and I'm not in pain. I can actually imagine getting up right now. And she got up and played with her daughter. And she just said it was such a phenomenal thing to do, because it's something that, you know, I take for granted, and you probably do too, you know, that you can get up and play and function and do regular things, whereas like someone who's in chronic pain, they're so used to not being able to play with their kids that they've missed out on so much. And, you know, to be able to give someone that gift, you know, they will stick with it if they know what the outcome will be, if they can see the changes and they know how much better they're going to be for sticking with it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So autoimmune disorders and chronic illnesses, that's something that like you can help with.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So someone with Hashimoto's, Graves, rheumatoid arthritis, you know, ankylosing spondylitis, psoriasis, they're all reversible if you're prepared to put in the hard work. Like the diets are not easy to follow, because we often either will do a GAPS diet, or we will do paleo or keto. So they're quite strict diets, or sometimes it can just be dairy and gluten-free. But if you can stick with it, gluten causes, and grains cause a phenomenal amount of inflammation and pain in the body. So if you can cut those things out of your diet, pain and inflammation will just go down. And certainly someone who has an autoimmune disorder really needs to be quite strict with going gluten-free for a long period of time to get their antibodies back down to normal. So you can absolutely get the antibodies back down to normal if you're really strict with doing gluten-free. That's such a big factor there for them. So yeah, it just depends on how motivated someone is to get better, on whether they will stick with the diet or not. Because obviously, you know, if you're only a little bit unwell, you know, you might not stick with it. But if your antibodies are through the roof and you're in pain, or you're having trouble losing weight, or whatever it is, you're probably more likely to stick with it. So, yeah.
Okay. And I want to ask, with mental health, do you always also see improvement in those? And like, do people with mental health come to you, and are you able to help them with that as well?
So we do a lot of work with PTSD, and certainly there's a couple of genetic things with mental health disorders, MTHFR, which is the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene. And if people have that gene, then they're more likely genetically to experience anxiety or depression, or, you know, suicidal tendencies, or, you know, PTSD, whatever it is mental health wise. Bipolar as well. And the other thing is pyrroles or pyroluria. So it's another genetic disorder that predisposes you to a lot of different mental health issues. So one of the doctors, Dr. Ben Lynch, his research has discovered that 98% of kids on the spectrum have some mutation on the MTHFR gene. So it's very genetic. They've got a genetic predisposition to not be able to detox properly. So obviously any medication that's put into their body, antibiotics, medications in pregnancy, that will all increase the risk because their detox pathways are poor and they don't work properly. So, you know, you can do a lot to treat those genes, and certainly like mental health wise, if you're treating those genes, a lot of people are able to get off their medications, because the problem with antidepressants is people might put on 20 or 30 kilos from being on them, and they're great and they have a place, but if you're putting on 20 or 30 kilos, it may make you even more depressed. So looking at treating your genes rather than just taking something to suppress your symptoms is a better thing. And obviously counselling, kinesiology, what you do, like your hypnosis and the past life work, all of that is really fundamental in treating those mental health issues, because like we can give supplements to treat the genes, and you can give medication to suppress the symptoms, but ultimately like working through it and you know, discovering the why and looking at your triggers. I've seen a lot of people over the years with bipolar who are on no medication because they understand their triggers and they avoid their triggers or have the supplements or medication there for when their triggers might be in place. So it's really fantastic to see people with bipolar who are able to manage it quite well with no medication. So, yeah, that's been quite interesting to see people who are very on top of their health. And obviously that's not something that I would recommend just stopping a medication. But if you're working with a GP or working with someone else and, you know, you're feeling good and you're able to control it and understand your triggers, it's something that you can look at, you know, working with someone to come off. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wondered whether, there was something you can do, because I've seen multiple times where people say, oh, you know, just juice, just have kale, just have celery. So you're like,
the magic celery juice. Yeah, there's a guy who's written a book, and in his book it's all about celery juice, and that fixes everything. But I'll have people who say it makes them feel worse. So, you know, if you drink celery juice and you feel better, that's fantastic. But, you know, it may not cure everything. So you may have to do more than just drink celery juice to treat it, especially if you've got gene problems or, you know, something else that's predisposed you to your fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or Hashimoto's or whatever it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, yeah, I do see lots of people with my past life hypnosis with mental health, and, yeah, it's triggers from, you know, whatever's happened in a previous life, and often the same characters are in this life, and they can be triggering the person, and so finding out who they are and what the incident was is it just brings a lot of clarity and understanding about how you react and why you react to people, and it can have that real healing effect. And I think I just feel like it can sort of go into the cells and release from the cells in that way when they find out what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you've worked with a lot of my cancer patients over the years, and what they've given me, the feedback, I mean, they don't share too much, but they've just said, look, Jana kind of tapped into this incident when I was 16, and I really didn't think it was a big deal, and I thought that I dealt with it and let go of it, but obviously they're still holding on to it in their cells. And so obviously if they work with the physical stuff with me but then the emotional stuff with you, that's really important for them to be able to release that and let it go. If it's something that happened when they were 16 and their cells are still somehow holding on to that incident, and it's affecting them now in the present day, and, you know, causing links to their cancer or making symptoms worse for them. It's really important to be able to release that and understand that. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of cancer too, especially breast cancer, because I think there's, you know, so much of it around, it's all to do with nurturing, and you know, sometimes it's that the message is to nurture yourself, or it's to do with a child, or, you know, with an unborn child, or something's happened in a past life where you've lost a child. And I've even seen cases where a lady said that she was having these weird pains in her breast, and they were just little reminders for her to actually nurture her husband, because he was going through difficult times with his own mental health and things that were going on, and she actually came because she wasn't sure if she should leave him. And
wow.
Yeah, and it came through, actually, no, like, he needs you and you need to nurture him, be gentle with him. And so the message was, whenever you feel that pain, you know, just remember what that means and change or do whatever accordingly.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. Now I want to ask you too, so things that would normally require antibiotics by a doctor, say tonsillitis or something that kind of comes and goes reasonably quickly, is that something that you can address as well?
Yeah, certainly. So if people, I mean, what I see in regards to immunity is more recurrent tonsillitis or recurrent ear infections. And so if someone's getting recurrent tonsillitis or recurrent ear infections, or it's a child or an adult, whoever it is, what we are doing is we do a 500 foods hair test their hair, find out what foods are causing inflammation in their body, take those foods out of their body, and then also look at what deficiencies they've got. I mean, a lot of times I see people who are eating a lot of chocolate or drinking a lot of alcohol or having a lot of sugar, and obviously their immune system isn't good. And of course it's not going to be good if you're putting the wrong things in your body. But they've also got nutritional deficiencies or potentially mold in their house or in their workplace that they're being exposed to that's causing issues. So, it's really more if they get on to us at the beginning of an ear infection or tonsillitis, we can definitely help them. But with tonsillitis, sometimes they do need antibiotics if it has gone quite severe. So it just depends on the severity and how soon they get in to see us.
Okay. And something interesting that someone once told me, so I had a friend whose son had several allergies, like he was anaphylactic, and we were having a conversation. I can't remember what happened, but I made the comment that my son hates socks being tight. And she said, yeah, that's vitamin blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, is it like, can a deficiency in a particular vitamin even do that to someone where they feel like their clothes is too tight?
Well, that sounds to me a bit like pyrroles or pyroluria, which is a genetic disorder. And you don't absorb zinc and B6 from your food. So it makes you hypersensitive to sound, light and odour, but they're also very hypersensitive to touch as well. So, a lot of kids, not all kids on the spectrum, but a lot of kids on the spectrum will have pyrroles, and we treat them by giving them zinc and B6 to balance it. We test them via a urine test, first of all, to see if they do have pyrroles. But, yes, certainly that hypersensitivity to touch could be to do with the pyrroles or pyroluria. So it could be that they're either zinc or B6 deficient, or magnesium, or evening primrose, because they're all part of the pyrroles profile. So, yeah. And, kids who are chronically stressed, like I guess if a child doesn't like their socks being tight, then they might not like a change in routine, or there's so much to a pyrroles profile that you can go through. And if they don't like changes in routine, if there's family history of addiction, there can be healthy addictions as well. So it's not just gambling or alcohol or drug addiction. It can be exercise addiction. It can be people who just have addictive personalities. That's all part of the pyrroles profile as well. So definitely that sensitivity to tight socks can be a part of that. Zinc and B6, magnesium, and evening primrose deficiency. So omega-6. So yeah.
Okay. I'd never heard of that. That's interesting. Now you're doing a lot of work also with fertility, and everyone that comes to me from you says that they kind of ask around, I want to see a naturopath, who should we see? And they say, everyone says Jen, like they just get smashed with go to you. Yeah. And so you've been doing stuff with fertility. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have done a lot of training on fertility through a few different naturopaths and doctors, and it's really quite an interesting process, because a lot of couples don't need IVF. Once you start treating them, they do fall pregnant naturally within about 4 or 5 months, and some do still need IVF, but if you can do 4 or 5 months worth of treatment prior to their first IVF, it always works on the first time. And if it doesn't, then they often fall pregnant naturally the next month anyway. So it's just a big factor with fertility is male fertility is not something that is looked upon as being really fundamental and important. And if you look at a semen analysis, the reference ranges are for ART, which is assisted reproductive technology. They're not reference ranges for natural conception. So if you are running an IVF clinic, in New South Wales, you don't actually have to have any training. So any obstetrician or gynecologist can start up an IVF clinic with zero fertility training. So I've done a lot of specialised fertility training. In Victoria, I think there are requirements that they do have to have fertility training, and I'm not sure with Queensland, but I do know in New South Wales they don't. So those semen analysis that you see that your GP will read, your GP's had no fertility training, they will read it and say, well, hang on, you fit within the reference range, so you've got fantastic sperm, so there's no reason why you can't fall pregnant. Now, if a GP had done specialised fertility training like me, they would know that those reference ranges, oh, there we are. Sorry, you just disappeared for a second. Those reference ranges are for ART, assisted reproductive technology. So yes, if you fit within those reference ranges, then ICSI IVF will potentially work for you. But if you fit within those reference ranges, natural conception is probably not going to happen for you, because you might be within those reference ranges, but that's not for natural conception. They're not natural conception reference ranges. They are ART reference ranges. So, treating the man is essential, and I'll have a lot of couples who come to me and for whatever reason the man won't do a semen analysis, or it takes a while to get one done. And then when we finally do get it done, he'll have something like 1% normal forms or 2% normal forms. And it means 98% of them have two heads, two tails, or no tail, or the tail's curled the wrong way. The tail has to be curled a certain direction for natural conception. If it's curled the wrong way, that's DNA damage. That's no good. So, you don't want that little semen breaking into the egg, because it's just going to produce a DNA damaged embryo, and you'll either not be able to implant that DNA damaged embryo, or you'll miscarry shortly afterwards. So that really is so fundamental. And I would say some of the research I've read is 60 to 70% of infertility is male factor. So if you're not treating the man, if the man's not taking supplements, if he's not changing his diet, you can do all the IVF under the sun and you may never have that baby that you want to have. So it's quite interesting. I had a couple come to me and he'd actually dragged her along, and he sat there and was telling me that he was eating junk food, staying up late, doing all the wrong things. And I said to him, do you really want to have a baby? Because you're not showing me that you really want to have a baby. You're doing all the wrong things. Your cholesterol is high. We don't want, high cholesterol is probably one of the biggest factors I see in male infertility. So we need to have a good cholesterol range for natural conception. We need to have cholesterol of a minimum of 4 as well. So if your cholesterol is too low, if it's below 4,
I've lost you.
A high amount of sex hormones. So.
Oh, there we are. I just missed all that. I don't know if it recorded, but I lost your volume, your sound.
Okay.
But that's okay. But that's really fascinating. And I just want to say that one of your clients that came to me actually went to the future, and she saw that she was going to have a baby, and and to keep going to you. So I'm waiting to see that.
Oh, excellent. That's exciting. Wow. Yeah, no, I love that. I had another patient. She actually went to a psychic, and the psychic said, you have to go to Genevieve because she's going to help you have a baby. And I was like, okay, I'm open to anything. And she actually now has a baby. And so she had a son, and then her husband went through cancer treatment. So then they struggled and did a lot of work and a lot of IVF. And then she came to see me, and now they have their second baby. So it's really exciting. So, it's beautiful to see that, because obviously, not everyone will have their baby, but if you can do a lot of the work, even if you want to go down the IVF path, if you can do, for women, we say a minimum of 3 months of work, because 3 months for a new egg cycle. For men, 4 months for a new semen cycle. So if you're looking at 4 months as a minimum prep prior to conception, that's going to get both of your bodies as healthy as possible for natural conception.
Okay. That's really good to know. And actually, when you were talking about the semen samples, you said something that I actually wanted to ask you about in general, because I've heard people say that they will, for example, have symptoms of, for example, something with the thyroid, and they will go to a GP and get a blood test, and it comes up that yes, there is something, but it's not at the level that would sort of enable the doctor to begin treatment, and then they can become frustrated. So do you know what I'm talking about there?
Absolutely. So I work with a lot of ladies with recurrent miscarriage, and they're actually iodine deficient. So when we do a thyroid test, our reference ranges, we're looking at biomedical reference ranges, which are very different to your reference ranges that are listed on your blood tests. So those levels listed on the blood test are for actual disease. And so we're looking for pre-disease states. For fertility, a TSH, we're looking at 0.5 to 1.5 for effective fertility, and maintaining healthy TSH right through pregnancy. So if you have miscarried, or if you know someone who's miscarried, often TSH will change during pregnancy, and that needs to be monitored regularly, at least every 4 weeks in the first trimester, because that's often when, if you do have thyroid issues or family history, if you have a grandma or a great-grandma or an auntie who had their thyroid removed, or, you know, had thyroid cancer, or Hashimoto's or Graves', or trouble losing weight, or weight around the midsection, or people look at your neck, like you shouldn't have lines on your neck. People who have the classic thyroid lines here, they often have either over or underactive thyroid, and so it's really important to have a look at people's neck. We shouldn't have big, significant lines on our neck, especially at a young age. If you're, you know, in your fertility years, you shouldn't have really obvious signs on your neck. And extra weight, the studies actually show if you lose 10% of your body weight, you improve your fertility by 50%. So someone who is, you know, 120 kilos, or someone who has quite a lot of extra weight, might be told by an IVF clinic, look, we won't work with you until you lose 20 or 30 kilos. And for someone who is that kind of weight, that might seem like too much and too great weight to cut back. But if you tell them, well, look, if you lose 12 kilos, you'll improve your fertility by 50%. 12 kilos is probably quite achievable. And something that they can do, as opposed to 20 or 30, which a lot of IVF clinics are saying that they're not going to work with these ladies until they lose quite a significant amount. So yeah, and then also the same goes for being underweight. So women want to have a little bit of fat. I always say pinch your hips, and if there's nothing on your hips, then that can also increase risk of infertility as well. So you want to have a little bit on your hips. Women with low cholesterol, women who are underweight, I see having a lot of challenges with fertility as well, because there's not enough fat, so their sex hormones are often really low, and then, you know, they won't be producing good quality eggs.
Okay. And what was I going to say? Are you finding... so the MTHFR gene that you spoke about, because I've seen that thrown around a little bit, and you did talk about it. Do you find it's in adults? Are you finding more children? And is there something going on which is making people...
So, I think some stats I've read is 40% of the American population has some mutation on the gene, but your genes are not necessarily switched on as such unless you go through a stressor. So they can be switched on during your first pregnancy or postnatally or while breastfeeding. And then, you know, you might have a couple who were fine with conception with baby number 1, but then with baby number 2, they're having trouble conceiving. Or what I see a lot of is that they might have had 1 or 2 children to their first husband or partner, and then they're having trouble conceiving with the new husband or partner. And it's their MTHFR combination that doesn't seem to be working well together. So then we're just treating them for the MTHFR gene, giving them the active Bs, doing stuff in pregnancies. So, yeah. So we're giving them things to stop blood clotting in pregnancy, which is something we see a lot of, that causes miscarriage, and it's quite devastating, but it can cause like late stage miscarriages, like around the 5-month mark, where you're having stillborns because of that MTHFR gene. So if you do have a mutation on that gene, something really simple you can do is take aspirin, baby aspirin during pregnancy, and you stop that 2 weeks prior to birth. So if you are not being induced for whatever reason, you can just go full term. You would stop at about 38 weeks. If you see an obstetrician or a gynecologist, they'll probably prescribe Clexane injections if you have the MTHFR gene, because some obstetricians understand the gene and they will prescribe the injections to prevent miscarriage. So, yeah.
Okay. So are you finding that, because you're saying that children can have it, are you saying that there may have been some sort of trauma or something that's happened to a young child to activate that?
Well, I guess in kids, possibly the stress of medication or antibiotics, things like that may kind of switch it on for them. So that might be something that's affecting them gut-wise and affecting that gene. Then, if they have the gene, so that MTHFR gene, it's just harder to detox. So detox pathways are blocked. And then obviously, chemically wise, we're exposed to a lot more chemicals in our food now than ever before, in our water, in our air, like the sprays on our foods, farming practices, nutritional deficiencies, all of that kind of stuff is going to contribute to these genes being switched on, or certainly impacting the health of kids and adults. Yeah.
Okay. So is it best to go organic, or you think that doesn't matter? Do you promote organic food?
Well, I think organic, if you've had trouble with conception, going organic would be great. Or if you have cancer, going organic would be great. If you have some kind of chronic disease, certainly going organic would be a better option. If you have the MTHFR gene, it's putting less pressure and less chemicals on your body. Obviously, it's a lot more expensive, but they've shown the washout period's about 2 weeks of some of these chemicals. So in 2 weeks, you can see phenomenal changes in people's health and in blood tests and in chemicals that have been stored in their body by going organic after 2 weeks. But obviously the cost factor, you've got to look at if someone's doing it, cost versus benefits. Yes, there's huge benefits, but some people might not be able to afford to go 100% organic, and then you're just looking at some foods and, whatever you can in regards to organic eating. So, yeah.
Okay. And I just want to ask too, hormones in, say, kids and teens and menopause, when people go through particular changes in life, is that something that, if it's kind of posing as a problem, is that something that you would treat as well? Like, would you do like a test and a balance and then offer something to help?
Well, I do a lot of kids, a lot of kids that are not on the spectrum, kids with ADD, ADHD, kids with anxiety, depression, that kind of thing. So yeah, certainly we do a lot of testing, blood tests, we'll do urine tests, hair tests, that kind of thing, to determine what they need. And then from there we'll go on and, treat their deficiencies, do some questionnaires to work out sometimes if they've got deficiencies, if the parents don't want to do any testing. And, work on all of those factors. Certainly I do a lot of work with teens with acne. That probably seems to be the biggest thing in teens. And then obviously, suicidal tendencies and depression in teens is a big factor as well. And then menopause, there's a lot we can do for menopause, hot flushes, weight loss, the mood stuff, the brain stuff that goes on as part of menopause. And, some people go through menopause quite smoothly and others don't. And so, yeah, there's lots we can do to help regulate hormones and help with those symptoms then.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Now, I wanted to ask you too, you've been doing, you did a webinar recently and it went really well. What was are you doing those for people that, or was that for practitioners?
Yeah, so the webinar was through ATMS, and that was for just for practitioners who are members with ATMS, or if they're not members, they're able to buy the webinar and listen to it at any stage. And it was just on helping kids recover from autism. So it was just some of the things I do as part of my process. I was at a seminar last year and they were talking about Suramin, which is a drug that's in stage 2 trials, which I actually think they've ceased the trials altogether because it was so effective in helping kids recover from autism. And it's a fantastic drug. I was thinking, well, there must be a natural alternative. So I did some research and I since discovered Purarin. It's an extract from kudzu and it works on the same pathways as Suramin, and we're using that quite effectively. What changes we're seeing is that kids will increase their vocabulary range. So they'll use words that they've never previously used. They'll also take risks, and kids on the spectrum often, won't want to risk riding a bike or risk climbing to the top of a climbing gym at the park and that kind of thing, because they have irrational fears in their brain and they're not able to take those risk-taking behaviours that are healthy, that most kids actually do take. And basically what this Purarin does is it helps them, and parents will report back, my child is climbing to the top of the climbing gym, riding a bike, swimming, doing tumble turns, things that they weren't previously able to do. Even things like socialisation, so it helps socialisation skills. So they're going to interact with more kids, and also regulating their voice. So a lot of kids with autism will either speak too softly or too loudly. They don't read a room. They don't read people well, and it helps with regulating those behaviours. So it's pretty phenomenal for parents who, it's just little bits and pieces, but they're like, wow, he can really read a room now, or he can read people well. And it's, all of that is just neurotransmitter imbalances. And once you regulate those neurotransmitters with the herbs or, the drug, if you're in the US, you might be able to get onto some of those trials, but I'm pretty sure they've ceased them. One of my patients was telling me recently. So, anything that can help. And I put my son on it, and while he's not on the spectrum, the changes were phenomenal in improving his vocabulary, because he certainly got something going on there in regards to just a few little learning challenges that can be improved. And we noticed some pretty significant changes in him.
That sounds really amazing. I think that's really amazing. And I hope that people watch it and they take it into account, because it's really fascinating, I think. And the whole detox thing, I've read a lot about that as well, and I've seen a lot about, detoxing all the toxins, because I think we're just so surrounded by so much in our food and, in the environment and everything. So, that's really great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I forgot what I was going to ask. Was there anything you wanted to ask me? Because I know that you send clients to me sometimes.
I do. I send a lot of infertility or cancer people to you, because I feel like there's such a big emotional component, especially, the worst fertility case I probably had was a couple who'd done 11 rounds of IVF. Well, she'd done 10 rounds with her first husband, and that all ended, and she did 1 round with the second husband and no baby out of 11 rounds. And it's a lot of hormones, it's a lot of invasive procedures, that kind of thing. And, I feel like fertility is such a journey, and there's so much emotional stuff, as part of it. So I often send them to you because I feel like they're holding on to something that's stopping them. And some of them really say to me, I don't ever believe that I'm going to have a baby. And they're really affirming that belief system. And then obviously there's some blockages emotionally that they've got there to helping that baby come into their life. And the same goes with cancer. And you'll get people who have stage 4 and they get better really quickly. And then you'll have other people with stage 1 who, go downhill really quickly. And it's like, there's no rhyme or reason of why someone with such a mild type of cancer would go downhill so quickly, or why someone with such an advanced cancer would get better. And I feel like the emotional part of it's a big part of it. So certainly sending them to you for hypnosis, helping with those triggers. And like one of my ladies who said that something happened at 16, like obviously stuff happens over the course of our life, and we often like suppress those emotions or suppress those situations, or, you know, some people completely block them out. I mean, there's lots of people who went through child abuse or whatever it was, and they've completely blocked out certain memories based on protecting themselves. So if they can come to you and open up those memories and be aware of it and understand that, okay, well, this is why this is happening for me, maybe they can then work through, you know, whatever it is that they've suppressed or held on to. So, yeah.
Yeah, because it can kind of just settle in the body. And yeah, people do. Sometimes I've had people go to when they were a child, and afterwards they say, oh, I had completely forgotten about that. Like they just kind of block it out. Yeah, and sometimes it is kind of linked to a past life. So, yeah, we kind of, do all sorts of stuff. But I think it's important to know too that once when someone decides to go down whatever path they want to go down for healing or for treating whatever it is, I think it's a change in the thinking. And sometimes, you know, people can go down all sorts of different avenues to sort of help themselves physically, but if they haven't addressed that mental or that emotional connection to it, then they just won't heal. So sometimes getting diagnosed and sometimes going through it can trigger that change within the self. And so that's why some, I guess, heal so quickly or you know, move forward really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people see cancer as a blessing. Some people are like, wow, this has happened to me and I need to change all these things and it's a blessing. And, you know, you see the couple and it brings them closer together and they've got such a beautiful relationship. And obviously that's the right way to respond to being diagnosed with something. Whereas the wrong way is to resist it and say, why me, and push it away. And I just remember a story of once a lady, she had brain tumours and she kept saying, I'm beating the brain tumours, I'm fighting them. And then when she embraced them and said, I love my brain tumours, and really changed her mindset and her thinking, they actually started to shrink for her and she started to get some results because she changed. Instead of hating on the cancer and seeing it as something negative, she saw it as a part of her and loved it and embraced it, and it was able to then start to have some shifts in her healing. So it's just, I guess it's about, you know, if you do have health challenges, rather than saying like, why me, or, you know, question why this is happening, just really embrace it and take it on board and make the changes that you need to make. Because I mean, in regards to cancer, like 95% of cancers are diet and lifestyle. So it's something that you've put out of balance. And for a lot of people, it's actually work. A lot of people hate what they do for work. And I feel like if you hate what you do for work for long enough, you know, it's really going to start to affect your health. So looking at all aspects of your life, diet, lifestyle, like work, and finding something you love, embracing that, and, you know, following your path of whatever it is you're supposed to do career-wise.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes I know it can be difficult to make those career changes, but it's really important to do something that you love and enjoy as well. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so finding the thing that gives you joy and making sure you do it. And it doesn't matter like whether it's cool or not, it's just something that everyone has within them that they need to do. And when you do connect and do something that you enjoy, there's like a real connection to the self, to the inner self and the higher self. And that's when you can contemplate and think and ponder stuff and get answers a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about one lady with cancer that I sent to you, and I remember she said to me, oh, once I finished my cancer treatment, my dad said, oh, so you're going to get straight back to work and get straight back into it? And she said, oh, no, Dad, I've hated what I've done work-wise for years. Like, I'm actually going to completely change my career path. And I thought, like, how fantastic that she recognises that the fact that she doesn't love what she's doing is probably a big contributing factor to her cancer, and that she's going to then change her career path and look for something different that's going to nourish her rather than do something that was causing so much stress and making her feel so out of balance. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I've asked everything that I want to ask. Yeah. So thank you so much. And can I say too that you're looking really fabulous lately. And I see all the exercise. Is that a new thing that you're doing?
No, I've always done exercise, but now I'm doing kind of longer rides. So I did 80 Ks on the bike on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, I'm probably doing more longer rides now than shorter rides. So yeah, it's good. And I've just done my first ever club ride, which was great. So it was great to join in as part of a club. So that was a bit fun. So,
yeah, that's awesome. I need to do more of that. I need to get more active.
Yeah.
I've been pretty slack because I'm a drummer and I kind of get physical exercise by lifting boxes and lifting big things.
Oh, yes, that's true.
And often we're running late or whatever, and I'm like carrying really quickly, and I feel like it's a real workout. And I get guys going, "Oh, let me help you with that," and I'm like, "No, this is my gym."
Yes, I need to do my workout. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't like exercise, so that's my fitness, I guess.
You haven't found the type of exercise you like. It's not that you don't like it, it's just that you haven't found the type that you like. Because it was interesting, I had a consult at lunchtime today with a guy, and he said to me that he does paddling and jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, there's some fantastic alternative type of exercises. So it's like, you might not have tried paddling, or you might not have tried jiu-jitsu, or you might not have tried the type of exercise that you like to do. So it's just about finding out what you like. And when you find that, you will like exercise. So it's about finding what you do like. So, yeah.
That's true. I'll find it one day. I actually feel like I want to go kayaking. So maybe.
Yeah, there you go, paddling. So maybe it is paddling. So yeah,
there's a river not far from me, and I always think it looks so peaceful when people are paddling. But I know that I'd be reclining with, maybe a wine and just taking it easy.
Maybe the first time you could do it like that way, and then gradually, wean the wine out of the exercise session. So.
Yeah. Yes, maybe. All right. Well, thanks so much for the chat, Jen.
That's okay. No worries, Jana.
And I'll catch you later.
Cool. All right. Bye.